Hello and welcome to another Tri-tutors video. In today's video we're going to be analysing the poem Touch by Lewin. So firstly, a little bit about our poet. Lewin lived between 1939 and 2019. He was a South African poet who was also an anti-apartheid activist, and he was imprisoned as a political prisoner between 1964 and 1971, so he was jailed for 7 years. That's going to be important as we go through the poem. And as I said, he was a political prisoner, so he was imprisoned for resisting the apartheid regime. So if we have a look at our title, Touch, it's a very simple title, just one singular word, and that really makes us focus in on what this word not only denotes, but what it also connotes. So what are the connotations of touch? And then when we think about touch, we can think about the positive connotations and the negative connotations. If you think about touch in a positive manner, you can think of touch as being loving, caring. It's how you express different kinds of love. It is also a very important sort of human part of human development. If you think about when a baby is born, doctors always advise parents to have skin to skin contact with newborns, because it's a key part of our human development. It's a key sense. It's one of our 5 senses. But then on the other hand, we can have very negative associations and connotations of touch. It could be invasive, it could be unwanted, it can even be inhumane. So just from this very simple title, we're already thinking about all of these connotations of touch and how touch can be seen in these two polar opposite ways. Stanza 1. When I get out, I'm going to ask someone to touch me, very gently please, and slowly. Touch me. I want to learn again how life feels. So if we have a look at the stanza, we start with when I get out. So the use of when actually indicates this is an optimistic speaker. He looks towards his future and the ending of his imprisonment. So he doesn't say if, he says when. And when I get out, so we can understand he's writing from prison. So he's in prison at the moment and he's dreaming about when he gets out. The use of I is this personal first person pronoun, and this is important because it adds sincerity and authenticity to the poem. He's going to ask someone. Look at the word someone, it's not specific, and this indicates, which we're going to see coming up later again, his sense of desperation for a positive form of human connection, a positive form of touch. He's going to ask someone, anyone, to touch me, very gently please, and slowly. The words gently and slowly are adverbs, and this is showing us how he wants to be touched. The use of please further emphasizes his desperation for a positive form of touch. Touch me. Do you notice there's a lot of repetition in this poem? And here we see the first time. The repetition of touch me emphasizes the sense of pleading, this desperation, this plea that he really desires to be touched in a positive way. I want. This is a really short line, and I think that goes to show how he's trying to emphasize that this is his deepest desire. This is his true want, to learn again how life feels. So now we get really quite serious and we get to understand how touch is not something just literal. I mean, we can understand to learn how life feels, it's like literal, you feel someone's touch, but actually we can understand this in a more figurative and deeper implied way, is that positive touch is absolutely essential to actually living and enjoying life. If we have a look at this stanza and the next stanza, we're going to notice a lot of enjambment, a lot of run-on lines. Also, you should have noticed the indent. And both of these things, especially the enjambment, really emphasizes this sense of sincerity, of honesty, of reflection, authenticity. It's the speaker is speaking straight from the heart. So there's no punctuation. Well, there is some punctuation, but it's not, following conventional structuring of a poem or of typical writing, because it's just writing straight from the heart, putting down thoughts on paper. So we really have this understanding of this being a very authentic experience or that he's trying to relate. I always like to think of it like a diary entry, like perhaps it's so authentic it's not even supposed to be read by anyone, so it's just your thoughts. You don't have to punctuate, you don't have to use conventional strategies in terms of writing a full sentence and then putting a full stop. So you notice how the enjambment just adds this layer of honesty to the reflection. Stanza 2. I've not been touched for 7 years. For 7 years I've been untouched, out of touch, and I've learned to know now the meaning of untouchable. So a really interesting stanza that sets out this difference between the two kinds of touch, or introduces this idea. So I, once again, it's this personal pronoun being used, and the use of the contraction, just as it was in the first stanza, it really adds this conversational tone. And in this stanza, I've actually highlighted not been touched, untouched, out of touch, and untouchable. So all the times he references touch because they each signify something slightly different. So not been touched and untouched in a sort of very literal way. He says that he has not been touched in a humane way. So yes, he's been touched, as we're going to see in the next stanza, but he's been touched in an inhumane way. So here he's talking about he has not experienced positive form of touch in 7 years. The second and third line here, for 7 years, for 7 years, this repetition emphasizes how long this period of isolation from human contact has been and how he's thought about it every single day for those 7 years. Out of touch. Now this phrase, out of touch, we've heard this before. So if you think about it in a literal sense, he hasn't had access to positive touch, he's been isolated. But if you think about the expression that we use, out of touch, and what its association is, it's that you're lacking in up-to-date information or connections with the world. And so this speaker, because he's been in jail for 7 years and he hasn't had any positive connections, positive human relationships, he has been isolated, he is lacking up-to-date information, he's lacking connection to the world. And I've learned to know now the meaning. Notice the enjambment once again. This is showing the free expression of his thoughts. To know the meaning of untouchable. So untouchable, this is a really interesting word. As you can see, it's all variation of the things that we highlighted. But untouchable is the most severe out of all of them. It means that no one can touch him. His status in society is that of an undesirable. His prisoner status is the lowest of lows. He is an outcast, a cast-off. So we can understand that he is untouchable. No one wants to build a human connection with him, and how that is so dehumanizing. So the different variations of not being touched emphasize the different aspects of life which he is missing in his incarcerated state. Stanza 3. Untouched, not quite. I can count the things that have touched me. So short stanza, but a really important one. So untouched, and now we have a dash, and this dash denotes a shift and a further explanation to follow of how he's been untouched. Or in this case, not quite. He says, I can count the things. Notice the harsh alliteration of the C sound. It's a cutting sound. And also notice if you are able to count something, it usually has a negative connotation. If you're able to count how many times you've experienced this and this and this, then it might have this negative connotation because you remember, somehow we tend to, like human bias, we remember negative things more deeply than we sometimes remember positive things. So both of these things together, the alliteration and this idea of counting something, emphasize that these things, and we're going to talk about things as being, he doesn't talk about humans, he talks about things. It suggests this inhumane treatment. And so all of these different aspects emphasize that the way that he has been touched has given him or has yielded brutal scars. So we understand that these things have not been a positive form of touch at all. So he says he's been untouched by positive touch, but he hasn't been untouched entirely. He's been touched by things, by these cutting, harsh sounds, can count. These things, these inhumane ideas or people who have touched him in this negative way. Stanza 4. 1. Fists. At the beginning, fierce, mad fists, beating, till I remember screaming, don't touch me, please don't touch me. So 1, here we are listing the forms, he is listing the forms of abuse he has endured. The colon indicates the start of an explanation, and in this instance, and the use of the word fists, this is one of the things that have tortured him, or that have touched him, as he mentioned in the previous stanza. But the diction is quite significant over here. If you think of the connotations of fists, we think of aggression, we think of physical abuse. And so we can understand by that and you see how he's dehumanizing firstly, because also fists are representative of people who actually are harming him, right? But by focusing on fists, by focusing on the things, he's emphasizing the inhumanity of this form of touch. At the beginning, so this is denoting when he first arrived to serve his sentence in jail. Fierce, mad fists. So fierce and fists, we notice that alliteration, and this alliteration enhances the fierceness of the fists and the ferociousness with which he is being hit and beaten. The use of the word mad, I always find this a really interesting word when it's used in poetry, because it doesn't just denote something that's angry, right? But if there's a madman, what makes a madman so dangerous is that they are unpredictable. You don't know what to expect. And so the use of the word mad here has connotations of angry, but also unpredictable. He doesn't know what's coming next. Fists. Notice how fist is being repeated. This emphasizes that there are many fists and many punches that he is experiencing. This line, fierce mad fists, is also an example of a transferred epithet. A transferred epithet is typically when the epithet, usually an adjective, is transferred from one noun to another. That's a very simple definition of what a transferred epithet is. And so in this case, we can see that the fists themselves are not actually mad. It's impossible for the fists to be mad. But it's actually the madness is referring to the prison guards, the people who are punching him. But the use of the transferred epithet emphasizes the ferociousness of the beating. It's like the fists themselves are angry. Beating. So this is a very simple line, but really important. The repetition shows how he's been pummeled by many fists. And the ing indicates that these, and we're going to see it later as well if you skip a line to screaming. So this ing shows that these words are in the present participle form. So as the speaker is reflecting, or as he reflects on this experience, he's writing obviously after having experienced this, but he's writing in the present. He's writing as though it's continually happening to him right now, to emphasize how painful the experience was. He actually seems to feel the pain as he remembers it, as he reflects on it. Till I remember, the use of till is very colloquial. Once again, it's like linked to that contraction, this conversational tone. It's very authentic and sincere speaker. Screaming. So this word screaming is on a line all by itself. So obviously it denotes that the speaker is in pain. But an isolated word on one line emphasizes how alone and isolated the speaker feels in his suffering, and how he has no defense towards this beating other than to scream. And what he screams is, "Don't touch me." Notice how it starts as a demand. It starts with that imperative, "Do not touch me." And then it goes in the next line, "Please don't touch me." And then it turns into this pleading, this begging now for the opposite of stanza 1. Stanza 1, he was saying, "Please touch me, please have this positive human connection." Now he's going the opposite. He's begging to not be touched in this abusive way. Next stanza. 2. Pause. The first 4 years of pause. Every day. Patting pause. Searching. Arms up. Shoes off. Legs apart. Prodding pause. Systematic. Heavy. Indifferent. Probing away all privacy. So 2, he's now listing the second thing that he says has harmed him or has touched him in prison. And here we have pause. And the use of pause, is associated with animal imagery, and this suggests that he's been treated perhaps like an animal in this inhumane way. The first 4 years of pause, so notice the alliteration of the F sound there. There's a sense of painful remembrance in his mind that's erupting to the surface. We also have, then we go to the next line, the first 4 years, that refers to the first 4 years of his imprisonment. Every day. So every day, this shows us that the prisoners are not trusted. They are searched and demeaned every single day. Patting pause, searching. So patting pause, this alliteration of the harsh plosive sound is very invasive. It indicates this lack of privacy and this intrusion. Searching, notice the present participle once again. He is being patted down and searched in an inhumane way. This form of touch is undesired and demeaning to him. And it's intended to be that way, right? By searching these prisoners every day, the guards are ensuring that these prisoners do not feel human, that they feel like they have been seized of their dignity. Now we have this important parenthesis of these 2 dashes, arms up, shoes off, legs apart. So parenthesis usually adds additional information, and in this case it's adding additional information of what the search involves. The quick listing of these actions or these commands show the shouted sort of nature of the commands of the wardens or the guards, how they don't really care, they're just listing these commands at the prisoners. Prodding pause. So once again, the same note as we had for patting pause, that alliteration of the P sound. Systematic. So this is referring to the entire prison system, especially the searching. It's systematic. It's heavy. It's indifferent. So the touch is negative. It is unfriendly. It is lacking in any emotion. It's just invasive. There's no sense of care in prison. Probing away all privacy. Once again, that's alliteration of the P sound. And if you think about privacy, and having no privacy, it's a very inhumane and undignified way to live. And I think it's maybe something that we don't always consider, privacy as being part of, humanity, or being part of retaining your dignity. But this lack of privacy really alerts us to this, to the fact that this is a right that's been taken away. I don't want fists and paws. I want to be touched again. And to touch, I want to feel alive again. I want to say when I get out, here I am, please touch me. So I don't want fists and paws. This is a very sincere and honest statement. These fists and paws are these things that he's been talking about and the connotations that we have just discussed. I want, do you see this plea he has? To want to be touched, and here he has this repeated plea. He also doesn't want to be traumatized by this negative touch. He aches for positive touch, and he wants to feel that. He wants to be touched in a positive, humane way again. So this shows us that he has had love in his life and before he went to prison, so he remembers fondly what it was like. And to touch, so he himself wants to touch others. He wants to build human connections with others. He wants to be human. He wants to be touched and to touch himself, to touch as well. I want to feel alive. So feel, this I think references his sort of mental health as well. He wants to feel as though he's alive. And so here we can understand he's equating touch with life. So that's how important this sense is to him. Again, he once felt alive. So there's a sense of loss that he's experienced in prison because he has lost this feeling of being alive. I want to say when I get out. So when he gets out of prison, when he has his freedom, and he ends off the last 2 lines with his proclamation. Here I am, please touch me in this positive way. And ultimately he's asking, let me live again. So the structure of the poem, or the form of the poem, we saw there was a lot of enjambment and there's a free verse. The poem is free verse. There's no set rhyme scheme. And these two ideas, we spoke about them showing this sort of free nature of thinking, how he's just expressing his thoughts in this free, unencumbered manner. But it also presents irony, because the speaker is not free. So as much as his writing seems to freely go ahead without any sort of conventional boundary, he himself is not free. The short lines are fragmented, there's an uneven flow, the indents also add to this, and this suggests this unsettling feeling throughout the poem, and perhaps hints at the fact that he's not free and that he's struggling. The tone of the poem can be described as desperate, sincere, pleading, heartfelt, honest. The mood can be described as a mood of desperation, a mood of longing. The theme and message: human connection, physical touch and the different types of touch, imprisonment and dehumanization, what life truly means, the list goes on. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you found this video helpful. Please remember to like the video and to subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.